very basic task also. Yeah. Yeah. Again, as I'm training my brother, my grandparents, they all moved to Davisville. And they used all these other so I didn't know that. But again, they did not know all the available, very simple gas. They had a good casket that was all wood, but some people just want to go with these really basic kind of box. Okay, so. Yeah, so again, you need like something happens to you. And it just washes out everything. So the next time I can watch the video that I can still go on. And it's just everything's all washed out. Today will come up.
So messed up. It's so messed up.
But again, there's no way that's going to do that. Adjustments.
Good.
It's just washed out. We're doing it from the TV, it's not as bad, but it's still very washed out. And again, sometimes the sound is echo coming from the sound.
Well, that is.
The room itself is private. But actually, what I've noticed is, you guys are on at the end of Saturday. So I go home and it's still up. And actually, I can hear myself talking. Not for like 20 minutes, I can hear myself, please, it's this. There's nobody else on the phone, there's no microphones. People are like, constantly on the move. Even though the camera which actually had on the patio, that sounded fine. But that sounded okay. Maybe it was just the room itself. About the Rob Reed had something already set up to do. She may already know too. She may already know. She may already know back to college because she had something already set up. But I would think that it would be nice to let's go back to, okay, use the ball, go back to Davis, okay? You walk in the place, you guys run. Grandparents, my parents, my brother.
Right.
We still have these two things here.
Oh yeah, it's time to get started. Let's get started. Let's get started. Sing us a song. We know how many people said they're planning on coming? You know how many people said they were coming?
I have no idea.
Okay. Yep. Those are potential new secret reading for the family services.
Oh.
So, I got one for me, one for Josh, one for Mark.
You mean for the Friday night services?
Oh, maybe put it in Saturday morning if they're gonna keep that for the control system. Right, I'll get that one. Probably these masks is kind of a sweet spot where I don't fog up my glasses, but I'm also not shoving this thing up into my
Your
lower eye.
eyes actually, it dissolves your eyelashes too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels weird. We have up-to-date announcements.
Oh, good.
We have an up-to-date Shabbat list.
There's nothing.
That's up to date also,
Good.
so we're all set there.
Great.
We are set for tour, everything's where it's supposed to be.
I have no doubt. All right. Well, Shabbat Shalom. We're going to get rolling here. Starting on page 81 of the Blue Slim Shalom, Psalm 30. Is Moshiach Hanakarabai Lezavi.
Shabbat Services.
Fardam Sulholi, Pitak Sekibatas, Ready Simcha, Lamaan, Zermecha, Kabbalah, Gizom, Adonai Elamodekah. Page 83. Beginning of Pesukei de Zimra with Baruch She'amar. Baruch She'amar, Daya Olam, Baruch Hu. Baruch Shemo, Baruch Adonai Eloheinu, Melech Ha'el, Ha'aracham. Yachid Chayvalamim, Al Shabbat Baruch Shemo, Hagadol, Baruch Adonai, Melech Labatish, Baruch. Before you may be seated, Oh, like a rubbish modio, I mean, Adilotao, Shir, Lozam, Sichu, the Holy Fotao. Al die Rumsichain be altaregu. Touch not my anointed, and my prophets do no evil. Shir Nagar as Balaam Yom Yeshua told. Behold, I am in Melilim, and I shall not Masa. 85. Oh, the Hadar, the Father, the Feather in Combo, grandeur and glory of God, strength and joy of God in God's dwelling. Yismuku Shammai B'Tagal Haaretz. Bottom of page 85 of the box. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'nishtachatu v'ha'kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'nishtachatu v'ha'kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. We're going to skip ahead a little bit. We're going to go to page 90. Page 90, Psalm 91. Yoshe v'tzatat aliyom v'tzal Shaddai, Yitzhak dwelling in the shelter of the Most High, abiding in the shadow of the Almighty. Page 92, Psalm 36, also known as the Hallel HaGadol, or the first runner-up to Ashrei is the rabbi's favorite. By rabbis, I mean Talmud. Oh, Dunai Kitov, Gilel Chazor, Odun Elohim, Gilel Chazor, Odun Adonai Elohim, Gilel Chazor. Page 94, the Psalm for Shabbat. Let's read it responsively. I'll read the first two lines, and then after that, the italics you guys will take. Psalm 94 in the English, or page 94, Psalm 92 in the English. Psalm for Shabbat. It is good to proclaim Adonai, to sing or praise, exalted God.
To further your love each morning, in the faithfulness each night, in the visions of good, in the melody of the harp.
Your works, Adonai, make me glad. I sing with joy of your creation.
That is your works, Adonai. You designed beyond my grasp.
The thoughtless cannot comprehend, the foolish cannot fathom this.
The wicked may flourish, and spring up like grass. But their doom is still, you are free forever.
Your enemies, Adonai, your enemies shall perish, all the wicked shall crumble.
But me, you have greatly exalted, and anointed fragrant oil. I have seen sun palms with flows. I have put in spare my attackers.
The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree, they shall grow tall like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they will thrive in the courts of our God.
They shall bear fruit even in old age. They shall be ever fresh and fragrant. Proclaim Adonai is just, my rock, who really knows law.
And immediately over in the Hebrew, 6 lines up from the bottom, Tzaddik Katamar. Tzaddik Katamar Yefra, Eretz Lavan, Yish Neshet Lovim, Leveit Adonai, Lechatzot Elohim, Yahweh. Pages 96 and 97, Ashrei. Ashrei Shevechacha, Holy Holy. It's the Siddur Shabbat. Oh, cool. You get a Siddur. You get a Siddur. 97, the box at the top of the page. Flipping ahead to page 100 in the middle of the page. Psalm 150, the final psalm of the Psalms. Hallelujah, 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 shalom, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Amen. Turning ahead to page 104, Yishmat Tolkai. 104 to the top paragraph of 105. Nishmat Kotai, Urek Eshemka Adonai.
Not normally like this. Yeah, there are. Many that registered. There's still 3 more that said that they would. The weather might be delaying some people.
I tried to put in a good word with the Holy One to say, could you stop doing these storms that coincide with
On
Shabbat?
Saturday.
Just like push it a day.
Yeah, the Weinbergs registered, and then I think Mike Davidoff did as well.
Okay.
Right.
You got 7 right now.
Top paragraph 105.
You want to stand out there?
4 full lines up from the bottom. Second word from the left hand. Begin with. Begin with the Continuing at the beginning of Shachrit, Shokinah, middle of 105. Shokinah, Maharon, Begadosh, Shemot. V'fi sharim tikal, divrei tzadikim titbarach, u'shem chasdim titromah, u'bekerem kedoshim kadosh, ma'alot pri bavor, al chadei Yisrael. שכן כל קוצורים לפניך קרנבים ובלעי אבותינו להודו נעלם לשבח לפיירם להדר ולכלי לחלש על כל דברי שיר ותשפחות דוד בן ישי עבדך משיבך. Beginning Yishtabach on 106 we rise. Yishtabach Shivah. Rahon Rahon Etaver Olam Baruch Asaron Yaman Gad Matishmato Elohim Adonai Yifrachon Every Shivah Narek Yachidu All right, you may be seated. We continue on page 107. First sentence right after the part 3. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yosef or kuvarei Moshe oseh shalom b'nei etaknu v'kol yibukah v'kol yeshutcha v'kol yamuti kadosh Adonai. כפרן בעולם הזה, ואין זאת מלכינו לעולם הבא. אפס חלקה, ולמות המשיח, והתגמל המשיח, ותחיית המתים. 108. אל אדון הכל המעשים ברוך ומבורך וגדול נשמה וטובו הרי עולם דעת ותבונה שבגדולו הנגלה והגדולה שנראה שחמדו על המרכבה זכות ומשמור לפני כיסו כסבר החמי ושבותו מעולם שבא אלוהים יצא ודעה בבינה ומשכל כוח וגבורה נתן בהם לחיות בראש ובקרב לעתים ופיקים גדולה נעזים אדון העולם שמחים בצאצאים ובשמחים בבונה וסיבים הרצון לעולם בכבוד נוגעים לשפוט סמרינה לזכר מחלוקות הרב השמש לא יזרח אור רע והיא תזרח בנה שמעת נוגעים לו קוצר אמרו תפארת וגדולה ספרפים מאורחנים וחיות הקודש 109 אל אשר שבת כל מעשים יום השביעי, יתעלה ואשר הכיסק בדור. לא נאמר בפיתך יתפרו וכו אל החוצר. נאמר שיהינו שלת מעשה ידך ויאמר אורי שיחית מפרו פסלו 110 תתברך סורם מקינו וגולם ורי פירושים השתבח שמך עד מפינו ואמרים גולם ברורים גולם גרים גולם סימים אגרסם גולם וכולם גבייה בגשת הרע בשירה זמנה ורקים ושפים ופרים ארצים ומקשים מעמלכים את שם העולם אלד עבדו הגיבור בן הרק ועל שוב וכולם מקבלים עליהם עמוק שמיים זה מזה ונונים רשות זה לזה מקיש מסוים מנחת רוח וספר גרוע בדמה קדושה כולם כחת עונים לבמים בירה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות הארץ כבודו והאופנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מנסים מעשרת פים ימצא משפים ואומרים ברוך כבוד אדוני ברוך נמות יציב אור חדש על ציון צעיר ונזכה כולנו במהרה לאורו ברוך אתה אדוני יעשה מאורו אהבה רבה אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו כן וגדולה בתקווה עמדת עלינו Amin Makenu V'Avorotenu Shabbat Becha Shabbat Becha Amin Makenu V'Avorotenu Kefari K'Tikonenu Shantenu V'Avinu V'Abarakama Amrakim Rachim Aleinu V'Temrim V'Avim V'Avinu Haskim Lishma V'Arel Ma'odem לשמור ולעשות ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך יהבה והעמדנו את Melech Avotenu, Goleinu, Balatenu, Yetzreinu, Thurishvatenu, Odenu, Matineme, Lam Shemecha, Im Elohim, Zudatecha, 114. Yeshua, Avotenu, Matanu, Tehillayom Baruch Borah Moshe U'Me'emunei Yisrael L'Kanishvah S'Karadav Yeruvam V'Chamocha V'Elim Adonai V'Chamocha Ne'er Kodesh Shira Kadasha, Shira Yehudi, Shira Zur Israel, Ma'eram Israel, Uflein Nefayim Israel, Hallelu Adonai Tzvaot, Ketosh Israel, Baruch Adonai Yisrael. Silent Amidah, 115A or B, dealer's choice, on to the end at 120.
So I went to hang up my coat, and I remember that there's a box with about 70 bags of Oreo cookies.
Oh, really? Oh, already still
Many,
here?
many bags, yeah.
You had already brought them in?
I brought them in for the kiddish we're going to have on the 19th. So I was talking to Iris, and we're going to have either two things. If there's our anniversary comes up in February, so we can either try again to have a
When is it?
anniversary, like it does, they do the Jewish date or the English date is 16. So we have another kiddish about that. Get her out. Well, it's not too fussy. So anyway, okay. Or if you're planning anything on a Friday, anything dairy in terms of a synagogue function, right, or something.
We have a we have a family Shabbat at the end of this month. So that's early, but we could do another one. We have another something planned.
If it's if it's meat, you can't use it if it's dairy. You can,
Yeah. But yeah, we were gonna do another family Shabbat in 4 weeks. Have another one of those dark nights.
Okay, sounds good. It's a good way of keeping people connected. Very good way of getting people connected.
I think the weather conspired against us today.
Whatever it is.
We're supposed to have it.
You know, Daffodil over here, he normally comes late. Maybe he doesn't realize it. But unfortunately, too many people come late to get stuff to do. I'm sure Jeremy can figure something to say if they can't touch this 2 minutes, and then we'll see.
Anything lots of things to say, that needs to be intelligible.
Yeah, okay.
Anything in particular? What's the subject?
Oh, it could be IFP, it could be 2021, it could be the
2021 is still too early to tell. I'm gonna leave it alone.
Actually, the last rules on burning calendars to celebrate the passage of the vaccine.
Or we go real deep and metaphysical about like how time is a human construct.
That's true. We went to bed New Year's Eve, looked out and saw the moon and said, does the moon really know it's going to be a new year?
I don't think it knows much of anything. It's just us.
And then there are so many calendars. I mean, it's not I don't know when the Chinese New Year is coming up. I don't know when the Islamic New Year is coming up.
Hindu New Year.
And for that matter, there's still some groups that follow the Justinian calendar, and that's why they celebrate Christmas on Sunday.
We could also bring up the old French Revolutionary calendar.
Is that the one that the 3 10-hour days? 3 10-day weeks?
I don't know. I think they were full. I forget.
Well, why
There
should
was a whole uproar when they suggested that they should go to 5-day work weeks. So.
Right. Why should we have this discussion just amongst ourselves? See?
Here in the month of Thermidor.
Well, our kids are good examples of not knowing what day is.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I just feel like
Day
a
to
child.
day.
But there was really
Every day is the same, just the sun comes up again.
I told you I was sleeping people's on trying to fix my.
Anything wrong?
Yeah.
Or as the topic times, Asur Hadash Min Torah.
Well, that was across the filter. Gosh, Yeshua Min Torah, yeah.
You're the only person who would know that.
Yeah, it's actually
Other than
Uber Harris. All right, well, even though we're standing between now, we can still talk a little Torah, we can still do a little discussion. This is still a pretty rich parasha by P. So this is it. This is the end of the book of Bereshit, the end of the book of Genesis. For some reason, I keep getting Phil Collins in my head when I say that, so I don't want to. And it's actually good. It's a parasha that actually has there's this trend in the Bible among the main figures that we follow that when one of their stories is coming to a close, when they're about ready to shuffle off their mortal coil and move on to the next life, whatever that may be, they call their family. There's somehow their kin is gathered to their bedside, so they can kind of pass on their last instructions, their last blessings, their last little words of advice. And this continues all the way up. This continues up through Moses. This continues up through King David. I believe King Solomon also does something similar as well, although perhaps King Solomon's lessons to his sons about maybe eschewing family dysfunction could have been used a little bit earlier in their lives, so that they didn't go on this Henry V rampage against each other. So the parsha begins, or it's in the middle of the parsha rather. There is this chapter 49 begins, and yeah, it's going to be on page 183. 183 in the blue Hertz Chumash. Hertz Chumash, which is apparently different than my Hertz Chumash.
What's that first one?
I was smacking you in the arm, and then you go, ow, and I go, hurts, don't I? Oh, So Jacob is a Yaakov, and here it's interesting to note, again, Yaakov has two names, Israel and Yaakov, but here the Torah text refers to Jacob by his first name, Jacob, not by Israel. So do with that as you will. There's a lot of interpretations as to what does it mean when Jacob is referred by one name instead of the other. Because the Jacob persona is kind of the trickster, the con man, and the Israel persona is sort of the older, wiser, more mature gentleman who has sort of earned his esteem in God's eyes. So Jacob calls his sons to his bedside and delivers sort of both. These read as sort of a series of, they can be read sort of as blessings, but also he's sort of prophesizing what he sees happening with his sons. And I don't think there's much mysticism involved with that. He's been their father for the entirety of their lives up to that point, so he probably has a good idea by now as to what trajectory their lives are going on.
Some not so good.
Exactly, yeah. Some of these are really kind of like double-edged or backhanded blessings, if you will.
Right. So odd that a father would be saying those things to their children, I guess. It seems.
Why not?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It seems like you wouldn't want to say things. I mean, even if you thought, I guess I'm not a prophet, obviously. So anything I would say to my children would hopefully be encouraging.
Right.
To be, if I didn't think that they were going to be the most successful and best human beings possible, I would want to at least push them in a direction that way.
Okay.
With my words.
Well, because there's also self-fulfilling prophecies. You stick a, idea, and that could.
And especially, when children are of a influential age,
Yeah.
we put a lot of stock in what our parents tell us.
Yeah.
So if the words you're leading with is what was the airing of the grievances from Seinfeld? You're a great disappointment to me. If you leave them with that,
Yeah.
or like the movie Shallow Hal, you guys ever see that? Or
Yes.
Shallow Hal with Jack Black and Gwyneth Paltrow, so he gets hypnized by Tony Robbins to stop being so superficial when it comes to the women he dates, and so he falls in love with Gwyneth Paltrow's character. But his whole superficiality starts with his father's deathbed sort of blessing to him of just date women for their looks, don't date them for for their minds or for the content of their personality. He fails to understand at such a young age that his father was also severely doped up on painkillers in the hospital at the time, and he kind of was on this hallucinatory rant and had no idea what he was saying. He took it to heart. That seed implanted in his mind, and that's what drives the plot of the movie, is him having to then go through well into his adult life to basically finally get to a point where he learns how to undo that and how to actually make relationship decisions that are not based on these superficial traits. Because up to that point, he's been very unfulfilled in his relationships. He's been because he put so much stock in what his father said. So yeah, that there's I think coming from Jacob especially, it's going to be so you would think that maybe he would want the sons who have not acted up to their best selves up to that point, like Shimon and Levi, who stormed the kingdom of Shem, after tricking the men to circumcise themselves, and when they were weakened by recovering from that surgery, that's when they pull the Trojan horses over to sweep on in and slaughter everybody, and without Jacob's go ahead. And Jacob was thinking, oh my God, this is going to be so bad for us. Here we are strangers in their land, and we do this to them. Now we have to leave. We're going to be pariahs. They're going to come after us now. You guys didn't think about it. You have Reuven, who, as the Torah says, mounted his father's bridal couch, which means that he basically attempted to or did sleep with one of his concubines, one of Jacob's concubines, so one of his surrogate wives. And the tradition tells us, the commentaries tell us that that's not a good thing, because it wasn't just that he was lusting after her, it was a power move on his part. Some interpretations say that Reuven was actually trying to undermine his father's position. He's basically trying to say, you're done, old man, I'm taking over now. And because of that, he also falls out of favor. And so then that begs the question then, is there a way to, because some of this is very poetic, and the language is very almost cryptic as to what it means. And Rashi sometimes has a very charitable, let's see. Well, speaking of Reuven, okay, so because I found this. This is actually, for anyone who's ever interested, was donated in memory of Irving Singer. This is actually a commentary on the Torah, and it's got Rashi's commentary in both Hebrew and English. So if anyone's ever, it's right in the chapel. It's actually behind where, if we were in services, where David would sit, in that corner there. It's on that little shelf of books there. There's a 5-volume set of these. So if you're curious as to what Rashi has to say about this has it spelled out quite nicely. So let's see. I'm looking at, to Reuven, chapter 49, verse 3. Reuven b'chori ata, Reuven, you are my firstborn. Kochi v'reshit onim, my might and the first fruits of my strength. Yeter se'ed ve'yeter az, the excellence of dignity and the excellence of power. So it starts off very nice. He says, you're Reuven, you're my firstborn. And traditionally, the firstborn is the one who inherits from the father. They become sort of they take over as patriarch of what remains of the family or the clan. And so he's acknowledging that at first, but then he goes on, verse 4, Pachas kamayim, unstable as water. Doesn't sound like we're heading in a good direction. Al totar ki alita mishkve avika. So you do not have the excellency because you went up to your father's bed. Talking about when he tried to get his way with one of his father's concubines. Az hilalta yitsui Allah. Then you defiled my couch that you went up. So it sort of takes this turn. So what do we make of it? Before we go into the Rashi, any thoughts as to Jacob's, the first blessing he hands out, which is going in order of birth, and he starts with Reuven. What do we read into that?
It was a mortal wound that stayed with him all these years. And all these years are literally over approximately 20 or something.
Right. So this is
And now justified.
Right. This is an unresolved matter between Reuven and his father Jacob. This is something that is stuck with Jacob as a hurt, and that's really bothered him to the point where he feels the need to basically, as part of his final valediction, mention it one last time to his son. So why do we think he would pick now to mention it?
Well, is there are there any responses to his kids, like to what they're saying that's recorded?
So
Like the reactions to what
reactions to these blessings?
Yeah. Okay.
No, because after the blessings are done, it basically says that he was gathered into his kin and died. And so that's sort of where Jacob's story ends.
Well, I would think if I was the father on my deathbed giving my blessings, or I was going to die soon, I would want them to at least have some understanding that would benefit them in some way.
Maybe learn from their mistakes, learn from their, I just want you to know that, you're my firstborn. And because what I look at it, the first half of the blessing here is, it's almost like aspirational. It's like, you were my firstborn, and I had all of these expectations of you and how you were going to behave and conduct yourself because of you were the firstborn. And instead, what you ended up doing was violating all of that. I raised you to be the one who's going to take over for me when I'm gone. And you did this thing that caused great hurt, that has actually made it impossible for me to trust you with that upon my death. It was said, I think I've mentioned here before, that someone, when it was found out that Warren Buffett basically is leaving pretty much, he's willed his entire estate away to various charitable organizations that he believes in. And someone asked, like, well, why aren't you giving any, that to your children? He says, because I did my job with them, raising them, they don't need my money. And if I didn't do my job right with them, I don't want them to have my money. I can't trust them with it. If I have any doubts about how they're going to handle it, I don't want to entrust it with them because of what I think might happen when I'm gone. And I'm not here to oversee everything. So there's sort of this, what I read in here is that Jacob he wants to make sure that, just like I'm sure many people do when they realize that, their days are coming to a close, is he wants to make sure his legacy, everything he's worked for, is secured somehow. He has to leave it in the hands of someone that he trusts. And so I think, here he's expressing his disappointment, and even as Rabbi Gary mentioned, his hurt that Reuven would do such a thing to him. I'm looking at Raj here now to see if there's any, just going through all the grammar of this. I'm getting a little worried about this.
He said great things.
But Rashi does translate as, the pachas kamayim, unstable like water, as recklessness, because you don't know which way it's gonna go. You don't know which way it's gonna, and so we don't necessarily know the damage that it's gonna do. And so he didn't think. That's what Rashi's saying. Jacob means here is that his rebuke of. Which I think he's doing this in a way that maybe he's hoping that after he's gone, maybe Reuven learns from this and does try to do better. Maybe he does learn that not to be reckless and impulsive and have such tunnel vision to go after what he wants that he forgets about the greater hurt that he could possibly cause others. Because Reuven's not entirely a bad guy. Remember, he was one of the ones who tried to advocate to his other brothers not to kill Joseph, tried to come up with an alternative plan so that he could save Joseph. It didn't quite work out the way that he wanted, but in the end it worked out for everybody. But in the moment, I think he thought all was lost, but he at least tried, maybe not as hard as he could have, but in the moment he tried to do the best that he could to ensure that their youngest brother was not going to be at least killed by their hand. So then he goes on to Shimon and Levi, and that's verse 5. And Shimon and Levi, he doesn't, Shimon the Levi Achim. So Shimon and Levi are brothers. But I don't think he's talking about biologically they're brothers. I think what he's talking about here is like they're two peas in a pod. They're cut from the same cloth. Keli Hamas, yeah, they are weapons, instruments of violence. Neferotehem. So weapons of violence are their swords. And then he goes on, V'sodam al tavo nafshi, ouch. Into their counsel, let not my soul come or ride. The kahalam, under their assembly, al tehan ekavoti, let my glory not be united. Ki v'apam harbu ish v'ritzonam ikru shor. For in their anger they slew men, and in their self-will they hewed oxen. Arur apam ki az, cursed be their anger, for it was fierce. The evratam ki kashata, and their wrath, for it was cruel or unnecessarily harsh. Came Yaakov v'afitzei b'Yisrael. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So he's making a play on his own two names here. But it's also, this is rather prophetic because he's talking about how their territories and the eventual holdings of the tribes of Shimon and Levi are going to be separated. He's like, I gotta, well, and again, that's a very parent thing to say, isn't it? Do I have to separate you two? Every time the two of you get together, something breaks, something happens. This is why we can't have nice things. So I have to keep. I realize that allowing the two of you to stay together is not going to bode well. He doesn't even try to couch this in any sort of forgiving language or any sort of aspirational language. He just comes right out and says, "Look, the two of you screwed up royally and caused a lot of trouble for us. So I have to make sure that you and your descendants don't continue to cause trouble for your family and then eventually your fellow, your co-tribespeople." So this definitely, these, even though we call these the blessings, some of these definitely do not read like blessings.
So the tribes of Shimon and Levi were separate from each other?
Remember, the tribe of the Levites end up not getting any sort of land holdings.
Okay.
Because they're from them, the priestly class comes, so they're consecrated to God. So they don't get any land and any territory. They end up, but they are they become the priestly class, so they get the tithes from the offerings. And they end up establishing these 6 cities of refuge, 3 on the west side of the Jordan, 3 on the east side of the Jordan, so that if anyone, those become Levitical cities that they administer and that they have control over, but then they also are in charge of these 6 refuge cities where where we learn later, if someone who is accused of manslaughter, if they need to flee from someone in the person's family who they allegedly killed, from what's called the blood guilt. They're trying to basically, if the surviving family members of their supposed victim are trying to basically engage in a vendetta against them, they can flee to these cities, and it's sort of like a free zone. There's all the options are there. They at least at the time that they're there, the avenging family members can't come in and do any harm to them. If they were to walk outside of the city, they're on their own. And if they're found to have done it intentionally, they're guilty of murdering a person, then the elders of the city actually take them and cast them out and say, "You're on your own, good luck." So that's what the Levites did.
Oh, finish.
No, that's
Okay. Dennis Prager has a relatively new commentary on Genesis, and one of the things that he repeats a lot is that he kind of says that since Levi becomes such a positive part of the future of Israel, it's worth noting that this must be contemporary because later generations probably wouldn't put in something, at least this is his argument, that was negative about this priestly tribe.
yeah.
So
It predates like when the Levites had
absolutely.
attained the status.
So the authenticity, what he calls, of the antiquity of the Torah.
So yeah, that's a very important thing to know, and that's a tool that when we're engaging in a critical study, a critical analysis of the Torah text, those are tools that you can use to realize, oh, some of this is polemical because they would, like the book of Deuteronomy, a lot of it has things in there that if you read it even in light of what happened, post Babylonian exile, that basically whoever wrote the book of Deuteronomy was basically using that as a vehicle for speaking out against what they felt were the reasons on the part of the Jewish people as to why the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple came about. And because in it, Moses' prophecies in the book of Deuteronomy is sort of final one long, speaking of deathbed speeches, the book of Deuteronomy is all one long valediction of Moses, for the most part. And it's Moses saying, you're going to go in there, and here's all the, you're going to do, you'll do things right for a little while, but then eventually you're going to screw up, and you're going to get cast out of the land by a foreign power. And so it's kind of one of those things where it was for the people at the time people who are contemporaneous with what being around me to be reading that would know, he's talking about what the kingdom did when the Babylonians were the overseeing nation and they attempted to rebel against the Babylonians and all of the destruction that that brought to us. So because we look at the Levites and we think of some of the Levites like here the Levitical status, like in many synagogues are putting here, you get the second aliyah, you're given an honor. And a subset of the Levites are the Kohanim, the priests. So they get, we give them the first honor to signify their status. So that and in the days the temple stood and was in use, they served the religious functions of the entire people of Israel. So they had attained a high status in Israelite society. So I think there's what to say with what Rabbi Gary said there about if we can read this and realize that this text comes before they had the Levitical clan had basically achieved that status among their fellow Israelites.
Otherwise, you would think there would be an allusion to that.
Yeah, there may very well have been some sort of line in there after Jacob gives Shimon and Levi what for, maybe some sort of maybe a line or two in there about, but eventually you'll turn things around and be worthy of, be worthy of higher esteem. Sort of hinting that eventually that they're gonna mature and stop being so impulsive and angry because, like I said, what they did to Shem, the people of Shem was on par, like equal parts, Trojan horse, and I think the vendetta montage at the end of the first Godfather. They're sort of like what they felt was cleaning up all the old family business because they felt their sister had been defiled because Dinah had been raped, and so they wanted to avenge what they felt was an injustice against not only their sister but their family, but they did so in a way that did not look to the bigger picture of how that was going to affect everybody. Because only after because think about anger. When you act out of anger, these first two blessings really, the backhanded part or the pretty blunt part is talking about, their faults as acting impulsively, acting in the moment and not taking a step back to see the bigger picture of what the effect might have. Reuven had no mind of how this was going to affect his father by trying to usurp his position and trying to take over his concubine. And Shimon and Levi weren't thinking outside of their own anger when they decided to go all hot and bothered into Shem territory to slaughter all the men, and thinking about what far-reaching consequences that was going to have for them. And think back for a second to my previous comment about how the text starts off talking about referring to Jacob as Jacob, not Israel, and what that means. What were some of Jacob's traits? What was he known for?
Running away.
Running away. Exactly. Why was he always running away?
He was causing trouble.
He was causing trouble.
Apple didn't fall from the tree, right?
Exactly. So maybe that's why the text starts off using the name Jacob, because he's talking from experience. Maybe this is his way of recognizing the fact that, oh my gosh, this is father's revenge right now. This is all the things that all of the tsuras, all of the trouble and worry that I caused my own family through my actions is coming home to roost now that I'm a parent and a grandparent, and I'm seeing how I'm on the other end of things. I'm not the troublemaker. I'm the one who's left to clean up the mess.
The kids ever refer to him as Israel? Or they always?
They probably refer to it. They probably called him
Jacob.
They always father Jacob, but Israel was the name between him and God.
Well, his kids probably didn't refer to him by either name. They probably called him. Yeah. It's kind of like, this is one of those societies like my parents would always get bothered when my friends would come over and they would refer to them as Tim and Rose. Like, no, Mr. and Mrs. Pam. It's like, other people call us Tim and Russ, you don't. And I certainly didn't call them that, I think I called my mom Rose once. Now I do a joke. Okay, Rose. So yeah, so I think that's an interesting point to bring up. It's like, maybe, you know, I don't know that they can be cognizant, but did they even know that he got second in Israel?
And that was the nation
Right, well, from the stranger who we wrestled, they were that stranger was.
going through this.
On top of that lone little mountaintop, which is the duel, no witnesses. And that's after he had, finally he ran out of the ability to run away any further. It was a no retreat, no surrender kind of situation. He was back into a corner. So yeah, he was known for causing trouble and then running away from that trouble. So he would create a problem, and the problem would often affect others. But he didn't care. He just wanted to run away and save his own skin, to the point where he ran away for over 20 years. So, and then that's just stuff that popped into my head about like why is the Torah referring to him as Yaakov? And this could be saying he's not trying to be a trickster. He's speaking from the experience of somebody who learned his lesson and mended his ways from that. He did teshuva. And maybe he's feeling like, and maybe he feels like this is his one last chance to impart on his kids, not to continue to follow that path. Exactly. The school of life, the school of hard knocks. We learn from hard-won experience by enduring the consequences of his own actions. So maybe that's what he's trying to impart on them is like, don't be like me. Don't be recalcitrant and unrepentant in how you engage with the world and how you treat others. You've got to be more mindful of that. You've got to understand that your actions have consequences, that even if you're not thinking of it. If you're acting out of your tunnel vision of self-interest, and it's, you know, you can't see, you know, because how much does that develop when he just ran away from home? He's there 1 minute, the next minute he's gone, and never be, you know, and I believe he never sees his mother again. I don't think he ever sees Rebecca. So it cost him. So maybe that's what he's trying to do here. He's speaking from, as Yaakov, he's speaking from experience of a former trickster, of a person who's formerly so self-absorbed that he didn't even mind what his actions did to his own family.
Judah, on the other hand.
Judah, on the other hand, so talk to me about Judah.
Oh, he likes Judah. He was, well, I mean, all the things that I specifically about Judah is that he's somebody that can swallow his pride, his ego, reflects his actions and his well, I think a couple of parshas ago, there was some commentary that said he's like the first and maybe one of the only people in the biblical times that said, basically, I made a mistake and I shouldn't have done that. Which is
he's the first person in history to own up to a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to do.
But and just in biblical history, biblical accounting, that's probably not too far off the mark because because while the Torah doesn't shy away from the flaws of the figures, you're right. Judah is the first one to say with the whole thing with his daughter-in-law Tamar. He finally gets called out for it. She does it in a way that doesn't publicly embarrass him. It allows him to spare his dignity and his reputation. And I think because he was grateful for that, he decided he's going to own up to his mistake. That's a very good point. I can't think of any other instance. I know Rabbi Gary in the file banks. Can you think of anywhere else where anyone in the Bible before that just flat out admitted their mistake? Can't think of anyone.
Well, Joseph, when he is talking with the Pharaoh, the first Joseph, and he must hear Hayom. What's the context? Joseph is is bringing, is kind of intimating his something in relation to the coming out of, I'd have to look it up, coming out of the dungeon. But he said that's not the eye, and he must hear my own.
Is it Joseph who says it, or is it the cupbearer? I think the cupbearer is the one who says
Yeah,
that.
okay, so there's someone who's not even Jewish, okay.
There. Just like later on, we have Balaam, who's a non-Jewish prophet, but is a true prophet. His prophecies do come true. Who God speaks through. So too, we have another non-Jewish figure, the cupbearer, who, remember, the story is that, when Joseph meets with the cupbearer and the chief baker in the dungeon, in the Pharaoh's prison.
Yes, so
that's
how Joseph is pulled out of the dungeon. Correct.
And the cupbearer gets restored to his former position, and Joseph says, as he's going, don't forget about me. And he says, I won't. And then he does. He forgets all about him. So happy to be out of there. So happy he hasn't been executed like his colleague. And he ends up forgetting about himself. So it's only when Pharaoh comes to him and the other chiefs of his staff, worried about these dreams, the cupbearer goes, oh my God, we forgot about this guy. And he says, I am now recalling my sin, and that there is this guy down there who is actually really good at interpreting dreams, and I told him I wouldn't forget about him, and I did, but I remember him now, so if you go get him, he'll be able to make sense of what these dreams mean. So yeah, the cupbearer, within the Talmud, when we're talking about doing things, committing offenses and sins and screwing up, there's two main categories. You have the mazid and the shogeg. The mazid means you did it intentionally. The shogeg means accidentally. So I think we can categorize what happened with the cupbearer. It was an accident. He got excited at the moment. He was free. Must have felt good. Must have felt good to know that he wasn't going to be executed, because he was probably preoccupied with that. And so he forgot himself in the moment, but when he remembered, and that's what the rabbis teach in the Talmud, is that when you recall, oh my God, I'm thinking about it now, and I made a mistake, and you rectify it, as long as you admit it, you admit the mistake, and then you rectify it, which is the testament offering us the appropriate sacrifice. You take the Kohen, and they would offer the sacrifice for you. You were good to go. So you had to, when you realized you made a mistake, you had to acknowledge it, and then you had to make restitution.
And you were right. The Balaam in the portion of Balak says to God, says the angel of God that he Chatati. Well, you're Balaam Balak. Adonai Chatati. You know you got to be a God himself. And the comment basically is the midrash that second. The angels have the power to punish a person who, after sinning, says, "I have sinned." So,
Right, which is the idea.
Lesson from non-Jews to the Jewish folk.
Exactly. I think the fact that we have those stories in there is really can be really powerful. So yeah, so Judah is Judah sort of turned the tide a little bit here. Judah is the one, he admitted he made a mistake. So he did teshuvah. He learned and he grew through the process. I think that's where if we're going with this theme of Jacob speaking from his own experience, that's what he's trying to impart. Like, look what Judah did. He screwed up, but he owned up to it. You guys need to learn from his example.
One could say that's why, it says several places, that's why that could be the reason that Jews, Yehudim, come from Judah. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because why are we still called Israeli?
Well, we would call both, yeah, but
I mean, if we call ourselves,
we don't call ourselves Israelites that often.
or Jacobites. If you're living in Scotland or England in the 1600s, that's a whole different meaning. Only good movie about that. Much Rob Boy. One thing that caught my eye too, so looking all the way ahead to verses 22 to 26 of chapter 49, is the blessing for Joseph. So we get Because like a lot of, some of the other, siblings kind of, they get 1 or 2 lines and that's it. Of course, with Joseph, again, I think we see just how favored he is about Joseph and also his, I don't know that extends to his youngest son, Binyamin. But Joseph, he says, Ben Porach Yosef. So here the translation says Joseph is a fruitful son. Another translation of Ben Porach Yosef is that he is a really wild ass, or some sort of wild hind or antelope, as a way of translating that. And Rashi goes with that definition of it. He says that what that means, because he says, he's a wild, basically a wild stallion or a wild stag of some sort in the wilderness. And what does this mean? Well, it's referring to the fact that Joseph, one, was considered to be physically beautiful. And the Torah tells us as much. He was Marat Ayin, he was pleasing to the eye. He was a really, really ridiculously good-looking man. And so, and that comes true. And we see that he's in Potiphar's house, and Potiphar's wife takes notice of him because he's a really good-looking guy. And so that brings all sorts of trouble for him. And so what Rashi says is that Joseph's life is plagued with the fact that he's both physically a very attractive man, and he's also a very gifted. He's been blessed with this certain gifts. He's got the gift of dream interpretation, which for that he gives credit to God every time for that ability. He doesn't take credit for himself. And so, but also he turns out when he's very resourceful. He has a way of making lemonade out of lemons. Now he gets taken into slavery in Egypt, and does he sit there and sulk? No. He decides he's going to be the best slave that ever lived, and guess what? People take notice. Unfortunately, including Potiphar's wife. So he's been noticed for good reasons and bad reasons. And then he gets thrown into prison, being unjustly accused. He decides, I'm going to be the best prisoner that ever lived. And he excels in the prison, where the chief jailer actually puts him in charge of all the other prisoners. So he decides he's going to constantly work to excel and make the best of whatever situation he's in. He's not going to sit there and sulk about what was before. I wish I was back in Potiphar's house. I wish, he decides he's going to make the best of a bad situation. And he ends up working his way out of it. And then eventually to the point he becomes the second most powerful person in all of Egypt next to Pharaoh. And so he proved himself very resourceful. So there's what struck me about this is one, there's a danger to we have, especially I've been really staying off of social media as much as I possibly can, just because it's just gotten to be a little too much for me. Just all the stuff people post and all the negativity that's out there, it's just not been a good venue, unfortunately. And there's a movie called The Social Dilemma, which is on Netflix, which is all about how it's actually a documentary that is largely featuring the former heads and designers of these social media platforms and tech companies, including former higher-ups at Twitter, saying we never had any idea whatsoever that this is how this was going to turn out. We just thought it'd be cool to do this app and you can connect with people and send out stupid little whatever.
Oh, unexpected consequences.
Exactly, unexpected consequences. We did not understand the far-reaching consequences of what this was going to do or how it was going to be used. And so so it's with that in mind that I decided to step back from social media a little bit for my own mental health's sake. And because there's this idea, there's a book out called it's called The Art of Doing Nothing. It's not about being a lazy bum. It's about basically speaking out. It's a book that talks about not being obsessed with what the author Jenny Odell calls our attention-obsessed culture. We're obsessed with getting attention for ourselves, winning approval from others. It's always about, but it's never enough. And how our time and our attention are our two most valuable commodities, and they're sort of they're limited and non-renewable. So be careful about what we give our attention to and what we are concerned about regarding people's attention of us. Because of, with Joseph, you see that not all attention is good. And sometimes when you're in the spotlight, it's for all the wrong reasons. So it comes at a price. There's we look at celebrities. Some of us look at them and go, oh my God, they got it so easy. They go make a movie, then they go on the press junket, they tour the world, they're wealthy, they live in these great houses, they do whatever they want. But there's a double-edged sword with that because of all the attention, because of all the attention that they brought on themselves, they have no privacy anymore. They can end up in the news for any little thing. If someone catches them on the video allegedly doing whatever, it's all over the internet. And 1 minute, whether you're talking about celebrities or public figures, they can be well loved by everybody for whatever it is they said or did. And then the next minute they do something else that people don't agree with and they become pariahs. They get torn apart. And so what is that eventually going to do to a human being? Especially when, we have this culture that lives in what's called the Yelp effect, where we focus so much on what we perceive as the negative in a person or a group. And we don't often take time to expend the same energy or greater in acknowledging all those other traits.
There's reason.
What's that? Oh. They're making a commentary point. So yeah, that's just what crossed my mind with Joseph. Is he made a big show of not his looks. He never talked about how good looking he was. Maybe he just just knew it and was able to strut like John Travolta, staying alive. But he did openly talk about his dream interpretation gifts to the point where his brothers and even his father went from mild annoyance to his brothers, especially being like, we're going to kill him for this. Enough already. We know you think you're special because of this. So I think there's a little bit of a cautionary tale here because it talks about how he was the Torah uses this imagery of him being this beautiful antelope out in the wild, but because he's so, because he has such a presence that draws everyone's eye to him, it also is attracting all these hunters who start shooting arrows at him, trying to take him down because they want to take him as a prize. And one interpretation Rashi gives is that the archers are his brothers, but I think we can expand it even more broadly to talk about our own lives where we have to recognize that not all attention for ourselves is necessarily good attention, being careful about how and when we put ourselves out there. One of the big phenomena, especially early on in social media, was a lot of oversharing. People would put everything out there that they wanted, and it was things that maybe not everyone needs to know. Maybe we don't want people to have, certain knowledge of us. There's actually, still to this day, there's a phenomenon with when they have consultants, anti-burglary consultants, saying like, what should we do to make sure our house and our stuff is safe when we're going on vacation? We said, well, don't talk about being on vacation on social media. Because people like me are on there looking through Facebook and anything else and saying, oh, that person's not home right now. They're gone. I'm gonna go stake the place out. And so these people who just want to share that they're on vacation and they're happy, and that unintentionally informing less savory characters who want to take advantage of that for their own use, that right now it's open season on their house.
Well, I don't know if you've had to do this, but there's a big concern when you announce that there's a funeral, that the people know that the house is likely to possibly going to be unguarded because everyone's at the funeral. And so sometimes we almost ask the police to watch the house while they're gone.
I never thought of that, to be honest.
So you have warned people about that?
No, I've never even thought about that, but that's a good point, but also kind of sad that we would have to do that. People would use a funeral as
the sad part is the relevant part.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I mean, generally people, the point is to always have someone in your house. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
they're there anyways getting ready to show or whatever, at the normal, when life was normal, but
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it's one of the, and again, it's thinking about the,
because it's public news and people know, bad guys know that it can be done.
yeah, and there are people who are looking to, so we could be putting out something that we think is totally innocent or innocuous, but there are less savory characters out there who might be looking to capitalize for their own benefit. On, in this case, the misfortune of someone else, the misfortune and pain of someone else, or in the case of someone who's away on vacation, wanting to capitalize on, them actually trying to enjoy their lives. So there's, I think there's a little bit of a caution here. I think what Jacob is doing here, really more than anything else, these are admonitions to his sons. These are taking little snippets of their lives and saying, okay, you need to learn from this because this is creating this situation for you. You have a habit of doing X, Y, and Z, and so this is something that you need to be more mindful of because of the consequences that can happen as a result. So I think what Jacob's trying to do is I think he does want to set his sons up for success. I do think that he wants them to all be successful in their own right, whatever that might mean, or even just be happy lives. But part of that means having to learn one's lessons, including some of the more painful lessons from when we've made mistakes and when we haven't, and when we need to take a moment to do as Judah did and actually reflect and go, you know what, I was wrong. I screwed up. And so I need to learn my lesson moving forward. So I think, especially where Judah kind of falls in the order there, he's not quite in the middle, but he's kind of close there, providing a little bit of a pivot point especially from his first three brothers who just kind of get railroaded.
Go ahead.
Thank you guys.
Go ahead.
All right. We are gonna-
So do you, I had, in reading just about this parsha briefly, I had read that the first Shema Yisrael was maybe referring to Yaakov,
Interesting.
because he makes sure that his brothers are like, believe in trust in God, and the brothers say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one, Lord, or God, the Lord is one." There was some commentary I read about that being one of the first times the Shema is mentioned, and it was
Yeah.
his sons speaking to Israel, which was
So
Yaakov.
I'd be interested to see what,
I remember that.
you remember seeing that commentary, Jim? I'll have to look it up. I'll throw on the old Bar Elan flash drive and see, track that down. But that's an interesting, that's something I never thought about, is that it's actually
Referring to him, maybe
Right.
originally, but
Right, yeah, so there's actually talking about like, the God of Israel, this person Israel is your God too, and is one.
it was in that that JPS book that I had. Would you know, the B'nai Mitzvah JPS
Yeah, that's a
book.
good one.
It's great. It was mentioned in there, I think, that this was the original utterance of Shema Yisrael may have been a response to Jacob by his sons,
Interesting,
confirming that they believe and trust in God.
interesting. That's a neat interpretation of that.
I
Yeah,
had
so
not
because
read
so he's
that.
trying to, and then with that interpretation, is what it's speaking to, is he's trying to pass on his deepest values, his faith in God, to his sons.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, hey, let's continue.
Oh,
We'll
that
do a
was
Mishnah
interesting.
Berurah. We'll just study some Torah. We'll do a Mishnah Berurah for the full meeting. We'll go to our ill and in need of healing. Who are these? Jacob, who had just spoken so extravagantly about his closeness to Ephraim and Manasseh, does not recognize him. He has his vision. Has his vision begun to fail, as happened to his father Isaac in similar circumstances, or did he fail to recognize Ephraim and Manasseh because, having been born and raised in Egypt, they were indistinguishable from Egyptian youths? Tradition has it that they reassured him by reciting the Shema. Shema Yisrael, hear Israel, referring to Jacob, that we may look like Egyptians, but we affirm the same God as our father and grandfather. So even though we don't follow a lot of your customs, a lot of your practices, we were raised in a different culture, just want to assure you that we are your grandsons, and we were raised, thought to be adherents, to be worshipers of the same God as you. So your values made it even here to Egypt.
The original diaspora.
What's that?
The original diaspora.
Yeah, the OG, the first, the Egyptian diaspora. Interesting. All right, so we're going to offer a Misha Berach for Olim. All those who are ill in need of healing. I have an updated list of names here. If there's anyone else who is not on this list, male or female, when I'm done, raise your hand. I'll come around, go around you as I see you. You can feel free to either remain seated or stay in your place and offer up whatever additional names you have. So we are asking for healing for Ann Yan, Judy Kennedy, Marianne Griffin, Hadassah Abraham Sarah, Yehid Bagola, Revelea Bashmul Yisrael, Lisa Ranella, Ellie Goldberg, Chana Michaela Babatevin, Eliezer Akiva Mentova, Goldman Herschel, William Griffin Jr., Rob David Eliezer, Ben Randall, Jamie Largent, Avi Weiss, Mike Barr, Gene Elliman, Mark Goldberg, Patrick Murphy, and Yonatan Leib Ben Simonita. Are there any other names of those who are ill and need of healing that were not on this list?
Bill Robbie Summers.
This is the responsibility of eating food.
Anyone else?
Kevin
Wise person.
Okay. Sing along with the Debbie Friedman Misha Berach. Misha Berach Avotenu, Menorah Imotenu, may the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage, make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu, Menorah bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. And they have a refuah shlema, a speedy and complete healing of mind, body, and soul. And as always, we ask that the Holy One tends to those who tend. We're going to continue right now with back on our studio reading with Ashrei on 151 and 152. 151, 152, Ashrei. Ashrei Shabbat So we're going to go ahead and just take a few moments. If you want to daven the Musa Hamidah, begin the 156A or B, Alpha or Bravo. And it goes on until 161, or we can use this as a period of private meditation. Please continue to do so at your own pace. 182, Incognito. Riser reach in, 183 for Aleinu. Aleinu Shabbat We don't have any yet, but we will read the list of yard sites and those who have passed away in the previous year, and we'll offer up a communal mission, or a communal aid on other meeting for all of the deceased. So first, yard sites coming up this week. Today, January 1st, is the yard site of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. On the 3rd, the yard site of Pearl Ehrlich. January 4th, the yard sites of Bess Koach and Norman Roth. January 5th, the yard sites of Etta Kruger, Beatrice Mellon, Benjamin Mellon, David Waldman. January 6th, the yard sites of Hilda Citron, Hyman Rovner, and Sadie Silver. January 7th, the yard sites of Eli Cutler, Sheldon Ekman, Nathan Smulian, and Samuel, Nathan Smulian, and on the 8th, the yard sites of Samuel Charon and Samuel Myers. Are there any other yard sites coming up this week that are not on this list of being added? Yard sites. And as always, we do remember the members of our congregational family who passed away in the previous year and their loved ones. Ori Ben Chaya, Frederick Violet, Irma Wallen, George Floyd, Mayor Taylor, Holland Iron, Henry Gutman, Larry Groban, Helen Gross, Libby Kuchar, Stephen Rosenberg, and Fred Meyerson Rodman, Steve Rodman, who was laid to rest earlier this week. So I invite everyone to rise as we offer a memorial prayer in the Amen. Exalting compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the souls of all our beloved who have gone to their eternal home. Merciful one, we ask that our loved ones find perfect peace in your tender embrace, the memory enduring as inspiration for commitment to their ideals and integrity in our lives. May their souls thus be found up in the dawn of life, and they rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. And along 187, we have some quick announcements. Woo! Birthdays coming up. It's a big day for birthdays here. January 2nd, the birthdays of Philip Bornstein, Seth Gutman, and Jonathan Shamash. Seth is turning 14 today, and Jonathan is turning 20. The 3rd is the birthday of Jennifer Aldrich. 5th is the 17th birthday of Hannah Stover. January 6th is the birthday of Paula Fredrickson, and the 7th is the birthday of Paula Field. And no anniversaries to our reports. Let's see what's coming up here as far as upcoming events. The next in-person Shabbat morning service is going to be 2 weeks from today, Saturday, January 16th, 9:30 a.m., same bat time, same bat channel here. And there will be a link going out for that. Christine's been sending that out to the entire congregation. So for those who want to attend it from home, there'll be a link. And for those who want to come in person, as usual, we ask that people register so we can get a good idea of who's coming and how many people we can expect. Are there any other announcements to throw out there before we conclude? We're going along on 187. All right, guys. Well, I'm sure we didn't quite make the minion today, although I think, as we talked about a little bit earlier, I think this lovely weather had some impact on that. I was kind of wondering if that was going to be the case, because I know for folks who live even a little bit further out, like the roads could be tricky. Unlike, some more densely populated areas, there's just, not a big belief in, street lighting in many places, so. As soon as it gets a little dark and slippery, it gets a little bit treacherous with some of the roads here, so. Wish you guys all a Shabbat Shalom. Also, happy first Shabbat here of 2021. Happy New Year, you guys. May this be a secular year of health, happiness, and much love and prosperity. And as much as time might be a human construct, still, hopefully we can symbolically close the door on all of the surahs and bread that was represented by 2020. So. I wish you all a very, very happy and healthy 2021, and may this be a year where we all are able to move forward in a more positive fashion in our lives. All right, we are going to conclude with Adon Olam 187. Adon Olam Hashem Allah, B'Terem Kol Yisir Dibra, V'Nasah. Asai melech shemot mirah v'yachareh v'kotar kol v'halo yemot nora v'hu haya v'hu oreh v'hu yiyeh v'tzifara v'hu echad v'yein sheni l'hamshir lo l'hakirah Beli Reshi, Beli Taki, Velo Haot, Vela Yisra, Vehu Eli, Vechayto Avi, Vesur Chevri, Vetzara, Vehu Nisi, Umanosti, Nenatosti, Veyom Eva, V'yanato, Akiru, Ve'yisha ve'ayira ve'yimruchi ve'yati Adonai ve'lo